Hello, we are Coping Live Talk, and we are 117 times in the air, broadcasting different ideas about how to cope. And we are already, naturally, since it's 117 podcast, it says about our seniority in a way, though we are still very young, but the quality of our podcast and the level of our communication with our audience and the feedback that we have tells me that we are doing something good. So thank you, Candy, Shehan, and Scott Kiddle for your partnership, for this amazing partnership. Because in these 2 years and a half, I've learned that we truly, totally can rely on each other. And when we plan our guests and we plan our topics, we know our audience well. And so I invite everybody who is watching us today to always come back and tell us what do you want to hear. Tell us your life stories, because in every life story, it is so much wisdom and pain and trauma that it is important to learn from people who went through that with dignity, not giving up on their values, but also persevering, achieving something new, healthy. And since we are coping life talk, we talk a lot about how to cope with difficult situations in life. So, and that's what today our topic is about: transforming our health by transforming ourselves. So, we plan to talk today about how to look at ourselves in a way that we look at other people. Because sometimes we get kind of narrow visioned, and we are in a blind spot usually when we talk about ourselves. For example, let's share the examples. Let's say if I have health problems, it is like radar is like alarm, 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 and then you stop seeing things, right? All you want to have is a remedy. Soon, like, oh, I need to run to the doctor. And of course, especially when people have heart attacks or high blood pressure or maybe allergic reaction that requires immediate attention, you need to fix that first. But then, what I think is it is required of us when we calm down, we need to review our life. And in a way, it's going to ourselves, finding ourselves. How well do we know ourselves, and why do we have, for example, a repeated health problem? Does it relate something not environmentally maybe, but maybe socially, maybe our habits? And I'm not even talking about, intoxication, people over drinking, smoking, because it's obvious. But I think it is something in us that we can learn about ourselves that will point at the and connect us to our actually health. Let's talk about it. So why it is so important for us to know ourselves when we start seeing some health issues. So Candy, Scott, okay, Candy, go ahead. Oh, I see that
Right.
you have.
What this reminds me so of, as a younger person, I had eczema. And, that's that red, itchy rash you get. And it just got worse. The more stress I felt, the worse that rash got. And it was excruciating. It was itched so bad. And of course, it looked bad too. And so it was something that I was concerned with, but I could finally figure out about myself. That's how I was handling my stress. It would break out in eczema, or I would bite the inside of my mouth. I'll show you a clue. Here it goes, like that. And I would bite so hard that I would have bite marks inside my mouth. It was kind of that clue: keep your mouth shut. Don't say what you're thinking. And, I finally, I think it is a journey. I'm much older now. And so that eczema left me, oh, I don't know, probably it's been 10 or 15 years. But when I had it, it was really bad. And so I can kind of relate to the fact that you have to know yourself, and really so much of what you can do, you have a lot of power to heal yourself. I mean, I could get creams and they would absolutely help me, but they would not prevent it. And if I got in a real stressful situation again, it would come back. And it's just finally knowing yourself and being able to work your way through things that you kind of, I really think it's a way of healing yourself. I think it's a great topic. Thank you for bringing it up because there might be some other younger working person out there that maybe is struggling like I once did. And there's a way out of that. You don't have to continue in that trap. You can find your way out.
It's very true, Scott. It's a very good example, Candy. Thank you, because you definitely connected your stress to eczema, and many
Yes.
people suffer from that. And I, for example, I have a idiopathic angioedema, which is like out of the world. I suddenly, my lips swell, my tongue swell, scary. But then after all the testing, I found out that it relates actually to nothing. But
Oh,
it points at could be triggered. You see, it's like it is not like a certain allergy or certain maybe component, maybe medicine that I took, but it relates to cold weather
mhm.
and might be, and also can be triggered by stress. So then I have to, like you do. So Scott, can you relate to that?
Yeah. So when I think about knowing myself or anybody knowing themselves, uh, you really have to. I think you have to listen to your body
Mhm.
and trust your body. You know, when it's trying to tell you something. I had a situation a couple of years back where I had a sore in my mouth on my tongue, and I went to the dentist, and he said, "Oh no, it's just a little bit of inflammation. Uh, you're probably you're probably biting your tongue at night or subconsciously. So stop that."
Uh,
And he said, I can give you a mouth guard, and maybe that'll help you stop biting your tongue." I just knew, as sure I was breathing God's air, that I was not biting my tongue,
mhm.
and it. I was able to relay that to the dentist, and I said, "I think something else is going on. I feel a sensitivity to spicy food that I didn't have before, and so I was just listening to my body, and my body was telling me this is something different." And ultimately, I ended up getting to an oral surgeon, and he said, "You've got cancer."
Wow.
Yeah,
Shocking. Yes, that would
and
be.
thankfully that's all in the rearview mirror. But now
Mhm.
I'm listening to my body.
Yeah.
I think though, younger people who don't have decades of experience with their own bodies, with listening to their bodies, they may they may be inclined to just pass something off. Oh, it's just this or that. I'm not
Mhm.
going to worry about it. But the older you get, the more you experience
Mhm.
life, that your interpretation of what's going on, your understanding of what's going on in your body is more informed. I think.
Mhm. I
Is
think
that
that's.
Absolutely.
ring true?
Mhm.
I see that Norman Scott is with us today. Hi, Norm. And he says, love the health talk. Good to see everyone. And good to see you too. So that's awesome that we have such loving audience and people love
Mhm.
talking to us again. Send us your stories. And today, say hi. Hi. Hi, Norm. So today, since we talk about transforming our health, and transforming through or by transforming ourselves. So coming back home to who we are. And I think this is the hardest thing because when you ask people, yeah, hello, Kathy, that's very good to see you too. So we're talking today again about how to transform our health by transforming ourselves. And how do you even start? And what is the need to transform ourselves? But I thought if we connected to our health, it immediately brings up attention because each of us wants to be healthier. Each of us wants to live longer. And I think it's a very valuable desire because the longer we live as not just simply as people who drag ourselves, themselves around, but we want to be people who live long because we want to be helpful, because we have a purpose, we want to help others. Am I right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. But then how can we do that if we don't know ourselves? And another thing, I've learned from my experience, if I come to people and I try to help, and I keep deep inside of me a baggage, it's fake. It is fake because I act like I am a practitioner. I act like I am a rescuer, and it's like I know stuff.
Yeah.
Fake. It's fake because nobody, first of all, knows everything. But how can I know stuff if I don't know myself? Or if I hide something. For example, if I hide my childhood trauma, and I come to somebody who is in need of healing from trauma, and I will act like a happy self and try to help, the person will not trust me. I mean, they maybe get hooked up with all these, slogans and happy promises, but unless I go through that myself, you see where I'm going? Unless I live it daily, taking myself out of that grief and pain and learning with my skin that unless I change, unless I do something, and this is a key for our podcast today, the word that is forgiveness. We live with this unforgiveness for so long, and we don't understand, we don't uh, estimate it correctly, we don't assess it, that unforgiveness is toxic. We think that trauma is toxic. We think that somebody's words are toxic. Yes, they are. Bullying is toxic. Poverty is toxic. So many things are toxic. Marriages that are facing adultery are toxic. But again, what we do on the top of that, we intoxicate ourselves with unforgiveness. So let's talk about why is that so important to forgive those who hurt us, but also forgiving ourselves. That's, you see, without knowing who we are, without going back to ourselves, we don't even know that we struggle with forgiveness on two levels. So let's talk. It's a simple topic on one level, but it's the hardest. That's
Yeah.
the hardest one because we will see today that if people comment, tell us that what they deal with when they kind of suppress that unforgiveness.
I think the thing that we tend to do as, especially in your younger lives, and I know people who are still working, they're so busy and so caught up in the daily activities, you don't give that time to yourself that you need. If you can give yourself just a few minutes of quiet every day to center yourself and really think about what's going on in your life, it's such a blessing to you. Sometimes you might feel angry. You don't even know why. You're just mad. Well, that anger is so detrimental to you. It doesn't hurt the person or the thing you're angry at, most likely, but it is really destructive to yourself. And so I think if you can have just a little bit of time, and I think of young mothers who are working and they have young kids at home and trying to run a household. I know how hard that is, but you really need to give yourself some time so that you can really understand what's happening in your life. If you don't give yourself that time, I don't know how you fix things. And a lot of times we know what we need to do. Taking the time or finding the time to do it is really a stretch. What do you think about that?
Well, Candy, I can't help but think that doing some reflection and maybe keeping a journal
Hmm.
might help us slow down and have the time of introspection and begin to sort out
Hmm.
what's going on in our minds and our hearts. And of course, we hear that frequently from people who do mental health work. You should keep a journal, right? A
Right.
daily journal of your life.
I'd love to know how many people do that. You know, that is something that I would struggle with. It's not that I couldn't write, it's not that I don't have a story. It's that I know I'm afraid someone will find my story and read it, and I don't want to put it down. And I'm being very honest, because
Yeah.
people always say journal. It will just help you through your feelings. And I think, not a chance, buddy. I'm not going to write any of this down. But it's not that I don't take the time to think about it. And I wonder how many people are willing to do that. Someone told me once, it's okay, Candy, write that story down. Just have one friend you trust that will promise to burn that journal for you before anyone sees it should something happen to you. And so far, I have never felt like I could take that chance. That's somehow scary to me. And I
Yeah.
think it might come down to the fear of having my real self revealed. I think I know myself pretty well. I always said I'm pretty much at home. I'm pretty much at peace with who I am. I feel good in my own skin, and that's a gift I want to give my own kids. I really do. But I don't know if it's really true if I say, yeah, but I'm not going to write it down. So
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you think about that. What do you think? Lack of, I'm not sure.
It's interesting that what you said about if the fear that one day somebody finds your journal and finds out the whole truth. But I do know that I'm not sure about that, but it's true that it might prevent people from putting everything on the paper. And that's why some people have journals with like a little log, or they write something and they burn something. I've heard about that too. But whatever works for you, write something, at least a short note that what happened, and then maybe later when you are ready to analyze it and maybe sort it out, maybe then going back and at least processing, because our memory is funny, unless it's really processed and we kind of dig it deeper. And maybe because we don't want to deal with that right now, or because it's too fresh. But I don't do journaling like I probably should. But yeah, I can see. Go ahead, Candy.
Well, the other question I have for you and Scott, because I share pretty freely, whatever's on my mind. If you just happen to knock on my door and I invited you in, I'd probably tell you. I don't know that I'm very good at keeping my own counsel. And I want to know what you think about that. I'm pretty open and pretty honest about things. At least I think I am. But maybe I talk too much. There's always that side. What do you think about that? Is it good to share? Often, if I'm in a situation where someone else is telling me something confidentially, I really won't. I won't spread that. I really won't. And I trust them in the same way. But is that wise? Should you keep your own counsel? I'd love to know what you think about that.
It's an interesting question. You always have this challenging question. I think it's important to share. I think it's important to not overshare.
Yeah.
Or overshare and completely put it all on the table with people you can trust. Because I'm not sure how it is with you, but I know how many people said later that after they share with somebody, then they regret. And then they start processing it. And then when the worst fears are confirmed that the friend maybe shared with others, then it's a double trauma. It's a trauma. It's a loss of trust. So, but sharing is important because it helps with the counselor, for example, with people like us, with Coping Life Talk. It's important to kind of like one psychologist we hosted says, it's important to just drop it on somebody. Just kind of dunk it. But again, like some people will feel good about it and it will help them, but others will feel like, oh, why did I even share with my counselor, even with the counselor? So we have Kathy. Let's see what she says. So we have Kathy saying, carrying anger eats us from the inside, which steals our happiness. We then project it through our behavior upon others. That is awesome. This is a very good that is a good saying, because remember we the saying that once I hope it will come up right now, that when we do not transform our anger, then we transmit it. That's exactly what you, Kathy, are talking about. Then we projected through our behavior. True. And then another one, she says, really examining the source of what made us angry can really help us release anger. Yes. So that answers your question, I think, Candy, better than what I try to say. Thank you,
Right.
Candy. Yeah. So examining the source of what makes us angry. Interesting that yesterday Scott gave me a gift for my birthday, which is an ancestry kit. And there are so many questions there that I kind of gave up watching the movie that we are watching, and I was answering all these questions. And one of them was a simple one. For example, what makes you angry? And it was about audio sensory or visual sensory. And one of them was, does it irritate you when somebody chews loud and kind of with a poor manner? And I just jumped because it does. And nobody hurts me, nobody did anything, but I could sense that anger inside of me. So Kathy said, when we share, we naturally think that they will agree and justify our anger, but it can be a regret. That's what it is. Thank you. That it can be regret when they
Yes.
don't. So yes, that's what I sent recently to my sister. Um, three rules, and I will try to find it and share at the end of the program. But it starts with don't express yourself, and then the last one, don't overshare. And it's just like,
Oh,
interesting. So, and then she says, but it can also be an eye opener that we don't
Yeah.
need to carry as much anger as we are feeling. Perfect. Perfect. Because this way, Kathy, is that you point at the need of not storing it, not suppressing it, because suppressed anger is actually the dual sword, I think. It hurts us from within. It's a good example, I think, because it has two sides. And then imagine if it's kind of a scratches inside of your system. So does it help your health? It's not. It's toxic. But also the other side of the sword is that it hurts others, because when it's funny when we do not feel brave enough to express our unhappiness, not unhappiness, but disagreement, or simply address or confront another person who hurts us and causes that anger. Am I right? Then what we do, we come home and we just lash it out on our loved one. And the loved one is probably like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? I know that. And sometimes it's like, why is my spouse so irritable? Or why is my child so irritable? But because the home is a safe space, we allow ourselves to just simply express ourselves more in where we are. So today I wanted to share with you, we invited a person from Jakarta, and her name is Lisa Silvani. She is a medical doctor, and she is also an author of the book Coming Home to Myself, which talks about self-love. And it's interesting that if you think about self-love, then people feel uncomfortable about self-love because it kind of sounds very selfish, egoistic. Am I right?
It
maybe
could,
so.
yeah, it could. Well, narcissistic, maybe.
Narcissistic.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I think if it goes too far into narcissism, then it's a very bad thing. But some self-love is necessary for you've got to be okay with yourself and you've got to be forgiving to yourself. And unless you can do that, I don't see how you can have a healthy relation with anyone else. And so,
Yeah,
but maybe there is, if you took it too far, it could be a bad thing. Always thinking of yourself first is not what self-love is. And so I think
No.
we
Yeah.
know
yeah.
what self-love is, just caring about yourself and knowing yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's also that when we know ourselves, what Lisa Sylvia is talking about, she's talking about the importance of having a purpose. To be happy, happiness leads and the foundational for health. When we feel whole, when there is something that gives us energy, positive energy. And then when we feel so dragged down and kind of down, and then we get sick, it is something is not there, something is wrong with us. But it starts early and we do not pay attention. So it's either journaling or simply processing what she's talking about is going back to ourselves. So what she planned to talk about is like the number one reason people feel unhappy, no matter how many things they have or how much money they make, because they don't know themselves. So what I invite you now to watch a short episode with Alisa, where she's talking. She's from Jakarta, as I said, and so the time zone is just off, absolutely off. It's 5 a.m. there. So she gave us this video that I invite you to watch. I will try to share screen, and then let's see that we will watch her. Okay, here it is. And she talks about the importance of forgiveness. Okay, let's have.
Right then,
Let me know if you
I
hear
mean,
well.
not until I think that not until we really get to know ourselves that we can tell what our purpose is. Like,
Yes.
yes, at some moment, yes, I know I really like functional medicine, but I just don't really know if this is the thing that I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, is this it? Like, and then you try to ask again and again. And not until I know who I am and, doing the shadow work, things like that, that you can really tell, okay, you know what? Yes, this is my purpose. This is me. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is what I wake up to. Like, that kind of feeling.
Yeah, I wanted to say, everybody say, I don't know how to, not everybody, I want to say some people will be asked, so how do I find my purpose? I don't know what is my purpose. I think just like you just said that, ask you questions. Continue ask yourself the question when you ask the answer. Is that answer still confusing, or is the answer rather your heartbeat make you excited, you feel so much joy that probably you follow with that, you may find your purpose. And
Yeah.
sometimes purpose can be just easy. You can just relaxing. You like planting the plants on your yard. I think cannot be always big. Can be big or small. It's the quality of the life of the brother joy to you, right? So we talk about the self-love, Lisa. Everybody, we talk about the self-love. I wanted to ask you, what does self-love meaning to you? What do you do that create more love to yourself? I know we talk about the self-love. It's not just, oh, I wanted to eat a hamburger. I go get the hamburger. Not something you treat yourself nicely. It's something. It's more deeper than
Yeah.
can help you grow.
Yeah.
So, what is the self-love things you do help you to grow?
Okay. First of all, I was a people pleaser. I'm a
Mm,
So I create a burden that I shouldn't have to. Um, I don't really put myself on top of my own priorities. So, and at first it seems that, okay, so all I need to do is just put myself on top of my priority. But I think it's not, I think it's not until you realize what lies beneath that, when you do the shadow work and you get to see what is your traumatic experience. Like traumatic experience, it doesn't have to be like physical abuse, but it can be like how you brought up in your teenager years. Like it can be I don't know, bullying. Yeah, yeah. It can be like you've never been validated. Your feelings have never been validated by your parents. It can be as simple as that. But unknowingly, that creates so many things that we try to push down. And then when we need to do this shadow work to gain that. And I think the biggest thing is that for me at that moment was not about making myself the priority, but actually how to forgive the past, how to forgive the people who hurt me, and eventually have to forgive myself for letting them to do that. Like, I think the biggest one is how to forgive myself. Because unknowingly, we can, it's easy to point out, you know what, that those people hurt me, but then we let ourselves like drown in the hurt and in the hatred, and it, 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 it's eating at life, and we let that happen. So, yeah, the
Mm.
biggest part was actually forgiving myself.
Thank you for sharing, Lisa. I think what you talk about that we say self-love is you have to have boundaries. It's not just please people. And also forgiveness. Forgiveness is easy to forgive others, but how to forgive yourself and not just keep brought up back and feeling be hurt,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Here's a question for you, Lisa. Do you think everybody in this world experienced the trauma? Is there anybody where we say, I never had a trauma?
Mm.
Yes, I think even if as I mean the degrees can be different, can be varies, and the types of trauma can be varies, but because I think trauma has so many different spectrums, right? It's not only physical trauma, but it's also emotional, social trauma. So yeah, I think everyone can have those trauma. It's just a matter of whether they realize it or not.
Mm.
Mm, yes. I remember once I was one of people when I was in the networking, that he asked me, transformation healing. So what does it mean? I don't need a healing. I'm fine. I'm happy with my life. So if that person asks you, what you will be answer to them? Do you think everybody needs a healing?
Um, I'm not going to not validate their feeling for sure. Like if they feel like they're happy with their life, I'm so happy for them. But all I can say for them is that sometimes we see happiness as laughter. So
Mm.
yeah, so sometimes the meaning of the happiness itself is unclear or biased for some people. And sometimes it's kind of shallow, and not until some bigger things took place, then they realize that there was no happiness at all. So,
Mm,
uh, yes, and that is going to be a very big wake up call. So, but sometimes so many people will need that kind of wake up call before they go to you or to me or to other people like for help. And I think our job is to like hold space for them and then just be friends with them and take them as they are, because probably that is not their moment. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we said really the healing is who you are need start seeking. When you start seeking, start looking, that moment you have awareness that you know you need a change.
Mhm.
If you're like we said, if you're not seeking, you don't aware, you think you are fine, no matter how much we are come and say, oh, here maybe it's good for you, but that doesn't work that way, right? So I'm really enjoy you been talking about the trauma is from different, not just physical. Sometimes little things maybe affect you when you was young age, teenager or young age, but you didn't know. Then the self love is not just please other people. Also, it's not buy the hamburger to yourself to eat. It's the way how
It's
to
messy.
make yourself grow,
Yeah,
how
it's
to take
messy.
care inner inner self, right? So something make you feel stronger, better. That is the self love. And I remember when we talk about the talk about the trauma. When I was teenager, one year my mom was not happy with me, so she wouldn't talk me for 3 months. 3 months that when I was that age, I didn't know that it's trauma until after that, that's really affect my life when I grew up. When I started angry or feel not feel good, I wouldn't talk. That started the silent retreat. That really is unhealthy, you know. So that is talk about the trauma. I think many people experienced. So what is the big trauma you experienced in your life? And how do you get out with that?
Hmm.
Maybe
I
this is a
think,
little tough
yeah,
question.
I think I have several big moments that I don't know which one to choose. But um, all I know is that I'm quite religious. I'm quite religious. So and then usually when something just feels stuck, I surrender. I surrender. Like all I know is that I've done my best. I've tried my best, but I need to know that I do my best. Like I do my best first, and then I try my best first, and then I've done my best. I tried my best. So now I give it to you. Like yeah, I give it in God's hands.
You
So
just believe with
yeah,
your faith, right?
yeah. So I think that helps me throughout most of the major moments, major changes. I have several of those actually, but I think we as humans needs that kind of, you know, letting go of control. And yeah, because we can control what we speak of, we can control what we do, but we cannot control others, we cannot control what happens tomorrow. We There are so many things that is out of our control, and trying to control them just is it's like trying to pleasing people. It's nothing nothing good will come out of it, so don't try to control.
Wow.
Yep.
That is, so I hope we heard a few important things. That one of them, coming back to yourself, knowing yourself, that Lisa Silvani is talking about. And again, as I said in the beginning, she's a doctor, medical doctor, but she found it's not enough for her to just offer a prescription, but also to help people find the true source of their unwellness. So why are they sick? And so, what from her personal experience, she found out that unforgiveness was one of the major parts. Also, that her tendency to please others and kind of leaving herself on the back or aside, not addressing her own needs. And that's, I think, our society does not want us to love ourselves. It's a kind of the stigma is. Tell me if I'm wrong. Stigma is um, that it's selfish, like we talked already, narcissistic, and so we need to focus on others. We need to help others, but we also are people of faith, just like Lisa. Remember what she said. Another important thing: surrender. When
Right.
we can't change it. We just another thing she says important. We should not control others. We cannot make decisions for them. We cannot change the fact if they hurt us. What we can change is how we perceive that. So let's talk a little about that.
Could I say one thing, Lydia? Because my mind's not strong enough. I'll forget it if I don't say this. The most important thing I heard her say for myself, I think, was that probably everyone's had trauma, and I would have been one of those people that said, "No, I haven't had any trauma in my life." But when you think about it, I'm thinking about big things like my house never burned down, no one in my family was killed. But I think now about, oh, I didn't get the job I really deserved that I was up for. Oh, someone in my family got fired at a position they were really good at. Or, it was like, oh, there was a divorce in the family. Now that I'm thinking about what could be trauma, they're not huge things, maybe, but they're things that were probably pretty traumatic at the time and that I just didn't think about them being that way. So I think that's important. She said, yeah, probably you've had a trauma in your life. And when someone's asked you, well, are you happy? She says sometimes our happiness is so shallow. It's, Oh, I'm happy. But you know, it's on a shallow level. It's not really what is really making you happy. What do you value in your life? What is important? And I thought that to me was huge because I would say, yes, I'm happy, and no, I'm not had any trauma in my life. But when you look at it slightly differently, yeah, we've had trauma in our life. I think all of us have, and we just maybe haven't thought about it in the way that she's thinking. And so I thought that was really, really important to that. And that even if someone says, no, I have no trauma, I have no trauma, I'm happy. She says, it's just not their time to deal with it then. Validate them and say, yeah, that's okay. I'm glad for you. But, you know, just realize that maybe they're not ready for the next step. Now, I probably messed up everything you were thinking, but to me, that was just a light bulb moment for me. It was huge, and I wanted to mention it so I wouldn't forget it, but I don't want to veer off our conversation. So continue. What do you all think?
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what we needed. Because when you said that your eyes just opened, and I think that's what I think the first step toward ourselves starts with that eye opening experience. That's what she was talking about. She had that moment of eye opening when she realized I have to go deep inside of myself, otherwise, I'm losing myself. And so here we have a comment. Kathy says, my grandsons are watching. They said you are very nice. Thank you so much. Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm glad that people are connected to us. Thank you for watching us and thank you for your questions. But eye-opening moment is like, you can call it a aha moment, whatever. But whatever we call it, eye-opening, I like it. Because in a way, it is like opening the window and let the light shine into the depth of our soul, where we sometimes either neglect to look at or in, or we are afraid, or we are just too busy helping others or fixing other people's problems. So thank you, Candy. It was an amazing insight that you shared. Absolutely. That we usually, maybe we just self-deceive ourselves that we look for something major. Or my house was not, I like that example. My house was not burned down to the ground. I did not lose all my possessions. I did not have that horror, and then I never had a trauma. But then you started mentioning things that did happen, and they're painful and disappointing, especially since I know you well, you know your purpose in life. Because that's what another thing she and that another coach, Ria, the host, who talks to her and tries to get into the core of that, of her method of finding yourself. So what causes that? And we will host Lisa Sylvie soon. We just need to adjust the time zone since it's 12 hours difference with her. But since she shared this video, I thought it's a good step toward knowing her. She's a Muslim woman from Jakarta, and she, as I said, she tries to find a way to know ourselves better, because that's the first step toward healing. Because you know how many supplements I put into my mouth during my lifetime, and hoping for this harmony and balance and energy and youthfulness and longevity. I just love to look good and to act energetically, but then I just one day just crash, and I don't understand why nothing of this works. So Scott, what do you think? I know that, thank you for sharing about your cancer, but also what did you hear in this video?
Well, I had some thoughts about the topic of unforgiveness, and two things come to mind. The first is when we refuse to forgive, I think we lock ourselves into a place where the person who has wounded us is able to continue to wound us. But not necessarily because they're evil people and they're coming after you, but we wallow in the moment, we wallow in the hurt, and we get stuck there. And so that wound, that hurt, just is perpetuated, even though that person could be dead and gone for 20 years.
Right.
The other thought I have about that is we sometimes we cherish our victim status, our victim mentality, and I kind of have a picture of this rabid animal with its teeth in our hand, and the blood drips from our hand, and we're just petting this little animal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
can you visualize
Yes.
this
Yeah.
this unforgiveness is wounding us, but we have to wallow in it. We have to pet this little wound. So what does that say about our mental state when we wallow in that sense of victimhood?
I wonder about that because there has to be something that's reinforcing that. And I do wonder, maybe we just can't see that that has to end before we can heal. But I do know people that keep saying, oh, poor me. Why me?
Uh,
Oh, they wallow and they go over and over. I guess maybe as what we do that's not helping them, we might say, oh, I'm so sorry, and keep patting them on the back. So I don't know if we make it worse for some people.
mm,
I'm not sure.
It's an interesting, absolutely important conversation. I feel that when we are not able to forgive, there are two things here. You see, there is also such thing as cheap forgiveness.
oh yes,
Oh,
no,
yes.
So, and you know that those who don't know what cheap forgiveness is, for example, I remember the shooting in the synagogue in Overland Park. I believe it was 2013. And the grandfather and his grandson were murdered. And of course, the shooter was arrested. So then the pastor of a large church invited the mother. So she's, like a sandwich generation. This woman who is a church member, she is the daughter of the murdered man, and she is the mother of a murdered boy who was like 10 years old. Horror. It's just horror. And she was asked to make a public statement on TV that I forgive the murderer of my father and of my son. And this is what is called cheap forgiveness, because she did it next day after she lost two very dear persons to her. It's wrong. So this forgiveness should not take place, because what true forgiveness is when an abuser comes to you and apologizes. Not say, oh, I'm sorry, but apologizes sincerely. So it's more like a confession. So then you forgive. But sometimes it's not possible. It's either the person is dead, like you, Scott, said, or this person is absolutely not able to transform himself or herself. And I faced a situation like this in my life myself. So what I did not know, then you just sort of, what she said, surrender. Surrender, not of course to the abuser, but surrender to God, the higher power. In our case, God. And then just simply say, I can't forgive. Please forgive my abuser. So just you kind of leave it on God. And this way, you don't have that grief on your heart, and you just continue living. So let's see what Kathy says. She says it's important to establish self-love because we are the sole person who loves ourselves enough to seek happiness and the life we want. Seeking self-love also does not mean to lose our desires to be nice and helpful. We must examine the source of the pain and see if it really was able to act differently. For example, someone who hurt me so deep, I later had to accept that she was just not capable of being there for me, whether it was her selfishness or if she just could not bring herself. Yes. So you see what it says that, Kathy, you found strength within yourself. So not getting that apology from a person who hurt you. You found a way to understand that, like what Dr. Sylvie was saying, you cannot control other people's actions, right? So you realize it soon enough rather than making this burden grow within you and intoxicate your life, ruin your life and happiness. You found a way to decide, well, it's beyond my control, and I just step over. So, Kathy, you says also, I feel it wedged a wound in our friendship, but we are still friends. But I have a less expectation of her to be there when I need someone. Right, exactly. Thank you, Kathy. This is very good. I like your story. I like how you think and help us to process what we are wrestling today with. Because what is that self-love? Also, what does it mean to transform our health by transforming ourselves first? Because that's a topic for today, and I think it's important that we continue on this topic another time, another podcast, because when we meet with Dr. Sylvie, she will help us understand six, she calls it actually 6 steps to come home to yourself. And that's what will be our next topic, 6 steps toward ourselves. And I think it's important that we stay with her and learn from her because, again, self love is not selfish. Self love is more like self knowledge. Also, self love is finally admitting that I need a purpose in my life. Finally admitting that my happiness maybe it's on the surface. It just waits for the unfortunate situation, and this whole crystal cathedral will just fall apart with a nice crystal sound. But that's what I think. So this is any thoughts toward the end of our coping life talk today. Thank you for giving us loving hearts, people who
Right.
watch us today.
I think it has been a wonderful conversation, and it is a deep topic. You know, we're not going to get it all figured out in one day. I will be happy to talk to Dr. Sylvia. I think that will be very helpful. I'd love to know those 6 steps. So that sounds great.
Wonderful. And thank you for your insight, Candy. Scott, what is your last word for our podcast before we complete it? Oh, your sound, your mic.
I appreciated what she was saying about finding purpose in what brings you joy, not just what brings you pleasure.
Right.
You know, I could say, well, what brings me pleasure is laying on the sofa, drinking beer, and watching football. I don't think that's a very meaningful purpose for life, and it's certainly not something that is going to drive you to become a better person, healthier, mentally, emotionally, socially, physically. So finding joy.
Absolutely. So that's a good purpose in life. And then let's begin here and start our next podcast with where we ended today. So transform your health by transforming yourself first. That's what will be our topic. And we will meet with Dr. Lisa Silvani. She's from Jakarta, and she is such a wonderful inspiration. She wrote a book. She spoke worldwide. She is in medicine, but she also is an expert in psychology, and she is an author of the self-love journey that she calls 6 steps to come home to yourself. So thank you for your time today, and I hope we will see each other next week. Thank you to everybody who watched us today. We are Coping Life Talk, and we meet every Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.